Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Brazil is a big, very religious country and, as expected, is full of scary stuff all around, be it urban legends, cryptids, anomalous events, or haunted places. All posts should either happen in Brazil or refer to it. Brazilian explorers, please do your best to give our gringo bros some restless nights. Please keep refrain to standard X stuff. No gore or other shocking non-paranormal stuff. Have fun, y'all.
Well, since some of you are sharing your stories, to hear is mine. Nordestino here. Born in Alagoas, but I grew up in Pernambuco. Went back to Alagoas to visit my grandmother. She lives in a small fisherman village, Barra Grande, a single street away from the sea. Went to have a walk in the beach. It was about 16:30. After walking for like half an hour, I decided to go back. I noticed it's kinda taking too long to get back to the village. Thought maybe I was just tired and I kept walking. I start to get a little creeped out since it's taking too long and it is impossible to get lost in the beach. There is literally only one direction you can go when you want to return. But there is no point of reference I can use. The village is remote and there is only the sea to my right and an extensive coconut tree forest on my left. To make things weirder, I notice it is 17:30 but the sun is nowhere near to set. And here the sun sets from 17 to 18 more or less depending on the time of year. I keep walking until 18. Sun still nowhere near to set and I notice that there are no birds singing, which is almost impossible to happen here outside of when we have a heavy storm, but the day is clear and the sun is still up. Now I get really nervous. I sit down to think and thought that maybe I could just have missed the village and walked away in the wrong direction, but I dismissed the idea because there's lots of boats on the beach in front of the village. And also a bar thar goes almost into the water and I couldn't miss that. So I just get up and continue to walk. It is about 1940, the sun in the same fucking place. Also I notice there is no fucking seashells. I usually walk near the water and there's some crustaceans that I catch when I go to the beach. Tattooey. But now I can't fucking see a single one. My heart starts racing and I start running. I just want to get home. I see a coconut tree that is kinda away from the others and get a feeling that I should walk between it and the other trees. Immediately after doing that, I start to hear the birds singing again. Rushed ahead and saw one of the boats from the village at the beach. After getting to the boat, I find the village and run back to the house. Look at my wristwatch, 2015. Look at the clock in the wall, 17. I told everyone what happened, but no one believed me. Haven't told this story in more than 15 years. It was 2002 and I was 13 at the time. Sorry if I murdered English. I'm more of a lurker and I just wanted to share. My heart just started racing again just from remembering it. Also, I can't explain the weird feeling I had during the experience. It was like everything was hyper real, like I was completely aware. Another story I have. 2009, fishing with my father in Maria Farina, Pernambuco. It is almost 22. We are using a dragging net to catch fishes and crabs, up to my waist in the water. The only light source we have is my father's headlamp and the moon. Something the size of horse swims past us and stops about 3 meters away. It turns around and keeps still, part of it go out of the water. While it is emerging for a fraction of a second, I thought it was a sea turtle because I see a large greenish bulb. Bulb starts to wrinkles like an old man's forehead. Something between the wrinkles open up and emits a sound similar to a deep snore. Dad and I haven't moved a centimeter. The thing submerges again but stays in place. Dad looks at me and without saying a single word, we both start slowly walking away to the beach. The thing doesn't move. We got out of the water and turn off the headlamp. Without the light reflecting from the water, we see 4 or 5 of these things were around us. My father wants to keep looking at them, but I'm cold and afraid and keep asking him to leave. We leave. After that, I never entered the sea again. Not even during the day with a group of friends. And this one is from my cousin. My family went to a city in interior of the country for a party that the city have every year for some Catholic saint. There is a city monument called the Standing Stone, which is just a large rock that is propped up. The monument is about 5 minutes away from the actual city in the middle of a wooded area. I don't know the term in English, but it is a dense cottonga vegetation. Cousin, who was 14 at the time, decides to go alone to the monument. Few moments later, he comes back crying and with his hands and arms covered in blood. They wash him but don't find a single scratch. When he stops crying, he says that when he got to the monument, he put both of his hands on the stone. After that, he could not let go of the stone and felt that the stone was very cold, and told that the stone was red and had blood leaking from it. He said that somehow he was able to get off the stone and run straight back to us. I had never seen him cry. He was crying like a young child. The next day in the morning, 2 of my uncles go to the monument to check things. Stone is completely normal, gray just like it always has been, no signs of blood anywhere. They go to the church to talk with the local padre. The padre says that a long time ago the stone was where people used to tie the slaves to whip them. But no one from here had ever had any similar experience. That same year, the sister of my grandmother that lived in the city died and we never went back there.
Be me, 10 years old. Me and the boys jumped the fence on a football field some blocks away from our homes to play. We did this multiple times before. It consists of about 3-meter brick wall with holes we made in it for hands and feet, plus another about 2 meters of chain link fence. I am last to make the jump. Don't see anyone as I land. I came with 3 other friends and it's a massive open area with a single building at the very end. No way they could have ran there before I made the climb. Decide to walk there anyway to check it out. Nothing. Come back to entry point, jump back to other side. As I land, there are about 10 adults there, including their parents and my parents. One of them is crying hysterically, the others in shock. What the fuck? The men force the gate open and go in with bars and pieces of wood. I am confused. They tell me the devil was there. Huge thing, black cloak. They say it stopped chasing them and came after me. They say they screamed at me and made a break for it. Never saw or heard shit. They take us all into one of my friends' home. Everyone gathered around us in a circle. Priest comes in to pray for us. We are forbidden from ever going near the place. Still weird thinking about the fact that all this shit was happening while I was taking a walk across a very silent football field.
I was watching some horror docs on YouTube now and just remembered a weird story my aunt told me and some other family kids when we were young. It honestly still gives me a strange sensation after all these years. She said there was a time when she and a friend were alone at home. My grandparents were running some errands or something. They heard a knock on the door, but refused to answer since this took place in Brazil. Not exactly the safest place. But whoever was out there didn't give up and just kept knocking and knocking. So much so that both started praying out of fear for them to leave. Eventually it stopped. Fast forward a couple months and my aunt is in the bathroom doing whatever and she hears knocking again, except this time it isn't coming from the front door. She looks and sees a hand shape pushing from inside the bathroom mirror, distorting it, almost like a cloth. As if the hand itself was liquid glass. Picture related, as close to I could find how it might have looked. Obviously she bolts it out of there, but still manages to catch a glimpse of a mirror face coming out of it as well. She tells my grandparents, but by the time they get there it is gone. They brush it off as her being still affected by the other night and movies they are watching. After that she's scared to be alone and gets her friend to make her company every time. Though again another night, and her friend confirms this one, the hand on the mirror was there for quite a while. They'd hid but were still able to keep an eye on it. The hand was just there, completely still. When my aunt told me and other kids this story, I'd constantly be afraid of bathroom mirrors for weeks after. I still kind of am sometimes when I remember her look as she described the thing.
Be 6 years ago in college, studying abroad over the summer in South America. Having a great time so far. Learning about different cultures, seeing a different world, etc. Instructor, who was from Argentina, says our next destination will be Iguazu Falls. For the uniformed, Iguazu Falls is deep in the Amazon rainforest, on the border between Brazil and Argentina. Basically South America's Niagara Falls. We get there. Falls are stunning, the largest I had ever seen, and we all had a fantastic time getting pretty close. Day coming to a close. Instructor takes us to a small village a little off the beaten path. Forget the name, but basically one hotel there where we crash. Drop off our luggage and see what's in the village. I go into this interesting looking shop. Lot of different handmade items, but nothing like cheap souvenirs we saw in Buenos Aires. A necklace catches my eye. I often wear one, and having one to remember Iguazu Falls would be great. Bring it to the owner, who's a middle-aged woman. Gives me a kind of weird look, but I guess they probably don't see many white people in the village. I know enough Spanish to say I want to buy it. She continues to look at me strangely. Kind of like, are you sure about that look? Don't think anything of it at the time. Buy it. It's not expensive at all, but most things aren't out here. Immediately put it on. Looks awesome, and I show the rest of the students in my group. They say it looks kind of creepy but cool. Looking back, yeah, I would agree. Don't take it off when I sleep. Wake up the next day and I'm sick. Like bad. Sick for 2 days while we drive back to Buenos Aires and spend time there again. Time to fly back to America. Flight is rough with turbulence the entire time. Fly into Miami. Then back to my home city. Find out they left my luggage in Miami and I would have to come back to the airport to pick it up 2 days later. Come back to the airport. Get a ticket from the airport cop for being gone for 5 minutes while I got my luggage from the luggage claim. Still haven't taken off the necklace. Figure it has to be cursed. Give it to my brother, who didn't believe me. He puts it on. Gets into a car accident the very next day. Car is fucked, but he's fine. He believed me after that. He still has the necklace in a box. I refuse to keep it in my house and swear it's evil. He hasn't put it on since either. Pic related in the first post is the necklace. Second is Iguazu Falls. I also bought a mummified llama fetus while I was there. I didn't know it at the time, but a really big part of South American culture involved witchcraft or brujas, and there are definitely some cursed and charmed items they sell. Oh, here's a pic of the llama fetus with timestamp to prove it's not a LARP.
So there's not much detail to this story, which happened to me last year. My house is pretty much the last one in the city. If you keep going, all you see are farms. Literally, if you go out my front door, I see the fences of a cow farm. Pic related of a map of the situation. Around 19. The time I usually leave home for college. Leaving home with my girlfriend on my motorcycle. It's pretty dark already. Weirdly, no cows in sight on the farm that day. Whatever, just leave for college. I'm driving, talking to my GF when we pass through an odd bit of the houses where there's a 10 meters gap between houses no one uses. It's just there and it allows you to see into the farm. While talking, we're driving pretty slowly. There is some unkempt grass between the road and the fence, so you can't really see the fence unless you get up close. For some god-forsaken reason, I look at the gap. Starting from down low and making my way up, I see the grass. The top bit of the fence. And beyond it, some sort of animal that has its head down, like a cow eating, but I can't see its face due to the grass. I can only see its body. It looks fucking disgusting. It's not fat or muscular like a cow. It looks like if you had an anorexic cow, it was big but it had no muscle. No fat, only skin and bones. Shit creeped me out hard. Then the thing raises its head. It's not a cow head. It looks somewhat like a horse head, but it has horns, big horns like a deer. I'm on the middle of fucking Brazil. There aren't any deer here, especially some as big and creepy as this. This all happened in a span of like 3 seconds while I went through the gap. I've literally just looked to the side randomly and saw it. The thing fucking locked eyes on me. I felt terrified for a moment. I don't know why, but it creeped me out really hard. Then I just fucking bolted. I was going at like 20 kilometers per hour while talking, just accelerated to the max and left. Told my GF after I calmed down. She said she didn't see anything as she was focused on what she was saying. But she did say she felt something weird just before I accelerated and was pretty scared when I told her what I saw. Never saw the thing again, hope to never see it. Every time I go near that spot I look there and get the chills. Just wanted to share it and perhaps figure out what it was. Not an artist, but decided to draw a sketch of the thing, how it looked with its head down versus when it looked at me. It was insanely skinny for a horse or cow. Its torso was as thin as a human's. You could think it was a human with abnormally long arms and legs standing on all fours and with a horse head.
The chupa chupa, suck suck, or vampire lights phenomenon of Brazil. A series of reports in the late 1970s and 80s that humans were attacked in the Brazilian countryside by small orbs of light. The attacks occurred mostly in impoverished villages in the vicinity of the Amazon. Victims and witnesses claimed small orbs, of 3 to 6 inches in diameter, that emitted strong and burning beams of light would float around, seeking people. These would burn victims, as well as suck their blood and cause intense pain. A number of people suffered physical and mental illnesses as a result of the events. And there were reported deaths. The Brazilian military launched Operation Saucer in an attempt to identify the phenomenon. A captain of the military by the name of Holanda, who had provided information on the case to outside sources, was found dead in his home 2 months later. His death was ruled a self-end by authorities, though his family and others insist the death was suspicious. Information regarding the vampire lights is still considered classified by the Brazilian government. This information includes recordings of the orbs, as well as interviews and samples.
I only had one experience I would call UFO sighting. It was no big deal, but I'll green text it anyway. Backpacking in the coast of northeastern Brazil. Me and 2 friends, young, stupid and broke as fuck. Our mode of locomotion between places is basically hitchhiking/bus. Eventually find ourselves in some small village in the state of Alagoas. It's really small, like 400 inhabitants tops. The only thing to do there is going to the beach. At night we are bored as fuck since nothing happens there. Suggest we walk out to the dunes/beach to watch the night sky. It's a little far out from the village, maybe 20 minutes walking in the sand. Finally reach a point where we can't see the village anymore. Decide to stop walking and just sit in the sand and watch the sky. Sky is clear. I have never seen so many stars in my life. After some time a really bright circular light crosses the sky moving really fast overhead from us. All of us saw it since we immediately looked at each other when it happened. Start discussing what it could be. Too bright and too big to be an airplane, or comet/meteor, also gave the feeling of being really high in the sky, like a higher altitude than planes usually fly. A few seconds later, the same object crosses the sky again, this time in the opposite direction. The pattern repeats about 5 or 6 times before we decided to nope the fuck out of there. To this day I don't know what it was, I just know I never saw anything like it before.
I have a pretty fucked up disappearance story I witnessed while I was working at a museum managed by the college I go to. I'm from Brazil, and I study in the most renowned university of Latin America, Universidade de São Paulo. The museum is located in the biggest reserve of the biggest metropolis of my country. It's a pretty messed up place. I was once making a survey deep into the woods and found a fresh grave that held 3 bodies prior to me seeing it, but that's just a curiosity about the place. Now back to the story itself, I'll green text it. My university has a social program to divulge science and education, usually the poorest part of the populace. A huge event was planned, hoping to attend about 5,000 school kids. One of the attractions was intended to attract people into doing sports, explaining how it works scientifically. The designated sport was rowing, which is also a free-of-charge activity offered in the main campus. The rowing teacher, a very kind man by the age of 70, was the head of the activity. It was a week-long event, so one day this teacher thought it was a good idea to bring his dad to the park, so he could enjoy the outdoors a little. His father suffered from Alzheimer's. A 70-years-old man brought his Alzheimer's-suffering dad to the biggest reserve in the biggest city in the Southern Hemisphere. An alpha global city as defined by Globalization and World Cities Research Network. They both decided to take a walk around the park lake, which is a 2-kilometer hike, but not too far from the park's entrance. At one given moment, the rowing teacher felt a little tired and decided to rest on a bench. He then falls asleep only to wake up all alone on said bench. Even though there are cameras on the whole freaking park, none of them was able to track his whereabouts after they went to the lake. Search efforts were held for almost a month. They drained the fucking lake to see if his body was underwater. Canine searches only lead from the entrance of the park into the bench the old man was last seen by his father. It's almost as if he vanished in thin air after he left his son asleep, which, just for the record, is a man in his 70s. The case was hushed up in order to preserve the university's name. It was truly disturbing to be working there during these events. I seriously think it was all a plot of the rowing teacher to get rid of his sick father. Or maybe he took off because he was disappointed his son can't take a 2-kilometer walk without falling asleep at a bench. Anyways, the old man is still missing. Hard to believe he's still alive.
The Owhuama is a cryptid reported from the Venezuelan Amazon, considered to be the Yanomami people's version of the Mapinguari, which has itself been reported from the Venezuelan-Brazilian border region. Identified with an image of a ground sloth covertly produced by Gustavo Sanchez Romero, the Owhuama was described to him as a sturdily built, hairy animal with strong claws, and arms powerful enough to tear down trees and toss jaguars into the air. A ground-dwelling herbivore, it walks both quadrupedally and bipedally, and generally leaves backwards-facing tracks. Though rare, it can be dangerous, attacking only in self-defense, so the Yanomami have a great respect for it. It lives in deep, cool caves, and communicates by howling. While the Yanomami who gave the description lived in southern Venezuela, they indicated that the Owhuama usually lived further south, near or in northern Brazil. Czech cryptozoologist Arnošt Vosicek also collected Mapinguari descriptions from this region. The animal was described to him as a large bipedal browser with powerful claws, which carries its young on its back. In the 1980s, a Huaquiro claimed to have seen a ground sloth-like animal in the subtropical cloud forests of the Ecuadorian Andes. He described it as a large and unfamiliar quadruped, about 10 foot long, covered in shaggy hair, and sporting a large horse's snout. It emerged from a cave, reared up onto its hind legs, and began to browse on the surrounding vegetation. The Uja is a cryptid reported from Ecuador, described as a bear-like animal. A Shuar source describes it as a bearman hybrid with an odor strong enough to knock a grown man unconscious, which feeds on flower nectar and is not dangerous to man, leading to it formerly being hunted by the Shuar. A picture drawn by the Shuar who gave this description depicts the Uja as a man-like being with shaggy red hair on its head and back, a long tongue, and strongly hooked claws.
I've got one story that an acquaintance told me involving a research trip in Brazil. I didn't know the guy very well at the time, so I can't vouch for his trustworthiness. But he definitely seemed shaken up by what he told me. I'll tell it from his point of view. 23-year-old ecology student. I get the opportunity to study abroad, field work in Brazil. We'd be camping in the Amazon 2 nights, staying another night with a small tribe that the university occasionally worked with. Then camping one more night on the way out. It took a day to get out there by ferry. When we finished, we'd return to the university and finish up our research there. For a total of 2 weeks worth of work. The boat trip into the Amazon was fun. Drinking and dancing. Almost got laid from a Brazilian student, but decided against it. Colombian heritage, so I speak Spanish. Overhear the crew talking at one point. They're wondering nervously if they should turn around, but when they see me they all look away and stop talking. Next morning, we reach the place that we'll be disembarking from. First day of hiking was difficult, but incredible. So much plant and animal life. It was a budding ecologist's wet dream. As the sun began to set, I remember hearing what sounded like an elephant trumpeting from very far away. Suddenly there are guns in the crew's hands, but no one will tell us what's going on. We hike until it's dark and then make camp. Most people sleep in ENOs provided by the university. The rest of the crew sleeps on pads on the ground with guns. I hear the same trumpeting sound as before in the middle of the night. Only this time it's much closer. Maybe only a mile away. From inside the ENO I hear the crew outside talking. It's Portuguese, so I can hardly understand a word. They say Mapinguari more than once. Eventually I fall asleep. Wake up and some of the crew is gone. Turns out they went on ahead because a tree had fallen somewhere up the trail and had to be cut up to clear the way for gear porters. We eventually reach the village, which is abuzz with activity. Men, some in shorts, others in native clothes, have spears and bows walking around. Turns out there was an animal attack the night before and a little girl was killed by what was likely a jaguar. Damn shame. WEBM. Small funeral for the girl in both Christian and native style. Hear more Mapinguari. I asked the head professor what that means. Apparently it's some forest spirit, animal that is usually docile but very dangerous if it perceives a threat. Kind of like a rhino. Some natives and guides think it was responsible for the girl's death. Yeah, right, superstitious heathens. Hear odd sound all throughout the first day at different distances and positions. Natives are wigged out. All of them head inside before dark, instead of partying as planned. I, however, go for a walk around the village. Notice that along one side of it, they have a small crop of corn and other things set up, like an offering. The whole scene is like something out of a storybook. Beautiful night sky. Quaint jungle village. Nice little farm. Huge hairy thing eating the corn. What? A quadruped. Standing on its hind legs is using its claws to cut off the ears of corn and is eating them whole. Has a head like a cross between a bear and a horse. I try to back away quietly, but I trip and fall on a rock. The thing snaps its head around and looks at me. After about a minute, it lets out an ungodly bellow and fucks off into the jungle. Promptly get my ass up and tactically to my assigned hut. Next morning, the villagers are freaking out, saying it was a Mapinguari again. The crew and students decide things are getting weird and leave a day early rather than risk an animal attack. The rest of the way back to the boat is relatively uneventful. No sign of the beast, but we kept hearing that strange trumpeting sound in the distance.
Okay, X, let's do this. I have a strange story. I have some ones about lost time too, but this one is the strangest shit that happened to me ever. And even stranger, I never heard anything similar anywhere. Pardon my English, it's my 6th language. Around 93 or 94, I was 14 years old. Lived in South Brazil. Dad managed an apple orchard, farm. We lived in the grounds, a rural area, no shit to do all day. So sometimes I used to tag along with Dad when he did the rounds on an old pickup truck. One day, after lunch, he was going to check on a group of laborers, so I jumped in the rear and off we were. When we arrived, he got off to talk to the laborer's supervisor, and I just sat there, looking at the sky. I was not sleepy. Remember, I just had a ride in the rear of a pickup as a 14-year-old. That's when I saw it, coming from the west. Up in the sky, I saw the freaking moon rewinding, not at high speed. I reckon it took 10 to 15 seconds to disappear in the east. I was a kid living in a farm with the eventual wood. I knew my bearings. Right before it disappeared, I managed to shout out loud, "Dad." Later, he confirmed that I was wide awake, standing and looking up and east past them. No one else saw shit. I obsessed about that shit about a year or so, but never found anything remotely similar. Eventually, I brushed it off as being an overactive imagination, but now and then I remember how real it was. I saw the moon going back in the sky.
Actually, I have a story that happened to me and my sister, and my friends as well. Back in Brazil, where I am from, we were living in this house with a backyard that led to a smaller house, and the backyard had 10 feet tall walls, no kidding. It's to stop robbers from jumping from backyard to backyard, but it is sort of an overkill. Anyways, we moved there, and me and my sister used to play in the smaller house, where the laundry stuff was, and we'd return home when the sun went down. At first it was alright, but many times I felt like I was being continuously watched there, mainly at night. Then, my sister began telling me that there was a man made of darkness sitting on top of the wall that limited our backyard, watching us with red eyes, every night, when we entered the house. I thought that it was just her picking on me, but, nevertheless, it was pretty creepy. Her commentaries about that man never ceased, for the 2 years we lived in that house. Then, we moved to the US, into a townhouse apartment, in a condo that was surrounded by forest, and a rather creepy one. You couldn't walk into it without feeling watched, and, the weather being the weather that we have here, we had fogs every so often, even in summer. My sister then began talking about the shadow man once again, because she had seen him on the border of the forest when the fog rolled on, not once, but several times. But, not just that, friends of mine who lived in the same condo began talking about the same thing, a man of darkness, with glowing red eyes, independently, and they were all surprised to hear that others had similar experiences. Eventually, whoever was that disappeared, and I still never saw it, but I still can't even mention about it to my sister, because she will not talk about it, nor wants to.
The Minhocão, big earthworm in Brazilian Portuguese, is a large earthworm-like cryptid that allegedly exists in the forests of South America. It reportedly resembles a giant worm, with scaly black skin, a readily visible mouth, and a pair of tentacle-like structures protruding from its head. According to at least one witness, it also has a pig-like snout. Although this species is principally fossorial, it also has aquatic habits. It has been reported to prey on large surface animals, including cattle, by suddenly capturing them from below the water.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.